Okay, this is a bonus video and I'm gonna talk to you guys about how to paint water. So a lot of times when we paint a landscape, we wanna paint a lake or a river. And we haven't really talked about how to show water in a landscape yet. So if I look at a little example from my board, you can see that I have used some of the same ideas as like the ground and sky, where I've painted the sky. I have this row of trees at the back, but instead of this back section being like a murky green, like would be back here, I have added or inserted blue, and we have the effect of like a lake or a pond in my little landscape. So I'm gonna show you how to kind of achieve this effect and a couple of kind of tricks. So I've got my sketchbook open here, and what I'm gonna do is, you can see I have my extra pages. I'm just gonna set those aside so they don't slide into my way. I'm gonna show you a couple of things over on one of the sides, and then I'm gonna paint a little landscape on the other side. So just to sort of get ready for that, I'm gonna grab, so what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna just I'm gonna do a little prep actually of this side where the landscape is gonna be. You guys will wanna think about doing this too, because I can't paint a landscape without having some prep work done. So you can see I'm gonna make a graded wash here. So I'm gonna kind of drag this sky color down. And water is super reflective. And so what I'm gonna do to start with is just kind of use the color that I'm using for the sky. And I'm going to just kind of map that in. You can see I made it a little darker. So this is kind of one way to think about painting some water. If I want to have it be sort of lakey, I can just sort of keep it right here. If I want to think about it more like a river, I can kind of pull it, the river or stream effect, I can kind of pull it down towards the front of the paper. So you can see my sky is darker at the top, gets lighter at the bottom. My water is darker and grayer at the top, or the farther away part, and gradually gets lighter at the bottom. So if I want a lake, I would stop. This is going to be more of a stream effect. I can also pull out some clouds quick while my sky is wet. Grab some paper towel here and give my sky a few clouds. I am lifting a little bit out of my water as well. Some of that will reflect in the sky. While I wait for this to kind of dry so I can add some trees and some different things in, we're gonna just talk in general about water over here on the side. So the thing to remember with water is it is a flat surface. So if I'm thinking about painting water, it's a flat surface that has texture closer and will have reflection. So I'm taking some of this murky green. Like the water that's farther away from me is going to be like dirty or duller, and it will very often reflect the trees. So you can see if I want a lake, so I paint like a little mini lake up here. My water is going to, so I'm squeezing my paintbrush dry and I'm pulling out like a little bit of wave detail only at the front. This was kind of a little too wet, so you can see my trees are going kind of crazy. But if I were to paint then those trees in the background, I could go ahead and build on that, right? Those tree reflections are really tall, so maybe I need some tall pine trees here. And then some lower kind of trees in between. And I'm gonna bump the bottom of my lake. And then you can see, like, with this little practice that I've got here, like, it's not gonna be possible for me to add a sky. So you can see, like, the power of painting a sky. And then, like I said, you can add, like, some, I'm squeezing my brush dry and just pulling out a few, like, water details. But I don't wanna do those kind of farther away. Those are up close kind of details. But if you look at a reference photo with some water, we'll have this sort of general effect. If you're painting like a river or a stream, you do want to think about that it's going to kind of be smaller at the back and bigger at the front. So if I'm painting a river and I want it to feel like it's kind of weaving through my landscape, like it's going to be small to start with, and it's going to get bigger the closer it comes to the front. So sort of like over here, this will end up looking like it's this very, very far away. Okay, so keeping that in mind, I can also add some of this, and I will add some of this kind of more murky green color in over here. But now this is dry enough, so I'm gonna go ahead and add just some sort of gray-green trees at the back. So I'm going to paint those same kind of lump-a-bump trees that we talked about. These are just gonna be, this is just the far, far distant horizon line. Some trees. I want that to touch and meet the water that I have painted there. And I'm gonna bring that down just a little bit. So you can kind of see, like, I'm overlapping those first couple sections of this imaginary, like, stream or river that I've painted here. So this is going to hopefully feel like my far background. As I continue to move forward, you'll see that I went ahead and, like, I overlapped green right into the blue that was there. And now I'm kind of going back and scrubbing this together a little bit with my paintbrush just to kind of soften that overlap. As I move forward now in my landscape, I can get a little brighter green. So I'm just adding more green into this murkiness that I had before, but I'm not getting too bright. But you can see it's definitely brighter than before. Again, I'm overlapping and into that space. And maybe I decide, you know what, I want a little bit of a pine tree right here. So I'm gonna mix some red in with my green just to make it really dark and sort of pine tree-y. And my background back here, maybe I'm gonna put it over here actually, because the background looks a little drier. And I'm gonna make it be taller because it's closer to us. So you can see how this tree is going to feel closer because it overlaps the background space that's back there. Maybe I give it a shorter little buddy tree. And then that's gonna reflect into my water here. So one kind of trick to make the reflection is, because this is still wet, I can just pull some water, like a piece of chunk of something stuck in my painting here. And I'm gonna just kind of pull this down, and it's broken. It's not perfect. I want this to feel like a stream. I want this to feel like the water is moving. So I'm not putting a full reflection in. I will need to also just sort of put a little other color in. So you can see I'm gonna come back here with some darker sort of blue as we're coming forward. So this gives me some more layers. And maybe I decide, you know what, I want this stream to go further that way. I'm not worried about adding a lot of those background the details in the background. That needs to just drift. That needs to not be close. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna brighten up my green again. I'm gonna move to this next level. So this is my background, this is my middle ground. And this now would start to be more my foreground. So we have more, you can see I've made a brighter, distinctly brighter green. I could make this more yellow as I come forward. My little stream is kind of drifting to my next sheet in my sketchbook, which is fine. It's kind of a sharp transition here, so I just went back and got a little bit more of this kind of murky green to sort of blend. And now what I'm gonna do is, you can see the green is there, but there are no shadows. So I need just a little bit of a shadowy color to kind of integrate my stream and give the effect of that kind of ground attaching or going into the water here at this edge. I'm gonna leave some of the little white spots because that ends up looking a bit like reflections or ripples in the water. But this kind of shadowy sort of grounds that section into, and I can break this up a little bit here at the front if I want a little more kind of variety in my wave pattern, pulling a little bit of the green out into the water gives me a little more reflection. And there we go. We have a little bit of a stream in our landscape. I can then, if I want to, make a tree that's really close. So I could come back in here now with some gray. This is going to be wet, so it's going to make a mess. But I could go ahead and draw a really big tree. So I could start off the paper and do a really huge tree. I'm gonna put it over here because my stuff is too wet. So I could make a very large tree that just has some leaves. I could make another pine tree. I could just leave it as it is. But these are some tips and tricks for adding water into a landscape.